At 85, Cliff Richard finally breaks silence on Elvis Presley. Picture this. One of the biggest music legends alive, 85 years old, knighted, 250 million records sold, and still selling out the Royal Albert Hall in 2025, sits down in front of the cameras and casually drops a bombshell that sends the entire internet into meltdown. We're talking about Sir Cliff Richard, Britain's eternal pop prince. And the bombshell? It's about the one man Cliff has spent his entire life idolizing, imitating, and, here's where it gets messy, avoiding. Elvis Presley. The king. The man Cliff built his whole career on. So why did Cliff turn his back on the chance to actually meet him? And why, in 2025, is this story still exploding across headlines? Buckle up, because this one goes deep. The boy from Lucknow who dreamed of being Elvis. You cannot understand this story without understanding just how completely, obsessively in love with Elvis Presley Cliff Richard once was. Cliff was born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940, in Lucknow, India. After moving to England, he grew up in modest circumstances in Hertfordshire, a perfectly ordinary British teenager in a perfectly ordinary world. Then everything changed on a Saturday morning in May 1956. Cliff and his pals Norman Mitham and Terry Smart were walking down Waltham Cross High Street when they spotted a parked green Citroën with its window open. Wafting out of that window was a sound none of them had ever heard before, the opening of Heartbreak Hotel. Just that voice. A guy ran out of a newsagent's, jumped in the car, and drove away, taking the music with him. By Monday, Norman had tracked down the answer, Elvis Presley. They all laughed at the name. Famous last words. From that moment, as Cliff would later write in his memoir, Elvis immediately obsessed him. He described Elvis as sounding like he had secrets you needed to learn. It wasn't the lyrics, it was the rhythms, the feel, the attitude. And when he realized Elvis had an album out, he had to have it. But there was the small problem of money. So young Harry Webb got a holiday job picking potatoes on a local farm, bent double in the mud for $1 an hour until he saved enough to buy that record. A teenager. Picking potatoes. For Elvis Presley. If that's not devotion, nothing is. It didn't stop there. Cliff started eating peanut butter and jam on toast after reading Elvis liked it. He wore Elvis's favorite colors, pink and black. He vibrated his legs on stage. His dark hair would be immaculate at the start of a set, then assume a carefully stage-managed kind of disorder, none of it left to chance. Britain started calling him the English Elvis, a nickname he has spent decades both loving and gently pushing back on. As he has always said, he cannot be the answer to Elvis because Elvis is not a question. There is no answer to Elvis. He will always be the king. Which makes what happened next all the more extraordinary. 3 chances. 3 misses. Cliff Richard didn't miss meeting Elvis once. He missed him 3 times. The first miss came in the late 1950s when Elvis was on military duty in Germany. Cliff was on a European holiday and suggested the group detour through Bad Nauheim to find him. It wasn't hard, the walls outside Elvis's house were covered in graffiti declaring love for the king. Cliff walked up, knocked on the door, and a large American man answered. Cliff asked whether Elvis was in. The man said no. Cliff gave his name, asked for his hello to be passed along, and then, by his own account, they just ran off. Britain's biggest rising pop star knocked on Elvis's door and bolted. Take a moment with that. The second miss was hazier, a plan that simply never materialized. And then came the third. The one the internet cannot stop talking about. While Cliff was in America promoting his hit Devil Woman, a journalist who personally knew Elvis offered to arrange a meeting. Cliff said yes. Then, at the end of the interview, he asked to put it off. His reason? Elvis had gained a significant amount of weight, and Cliff wanted the photograph, the one that would hang on his refrigerator, to look a certain way. He said he'd wait until Elvis did his next film, because when Elvis made movies he dieted and returned to looking like the Elvis he remembered. So Cliff waited. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977. He was 42 years old. And just like that, every one of those chances evaporated. Gone. Forever. The interview that broke the internet and its unexpected sequel. Fast forward to November 2023. Cliff Richard, then 83, appears on This Morning with hosts Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary, alongside guest Sarah Ferguson. He's there to promote his memoir A Head Full of Music. Hammond asks if he ever met Elvis. He launches into the story, explaining that he turned down the meeting because Elvis had gained a lot of weight and he wanted the refrigerator photograph to look a certain way. The studio went quiet. And then the internet erupted. The clip flew across TikTok, X, and YouTube within hours. People accused Cliff of fat-shaming the late king of rock and roll. Singer Alison Moyet weighed in with cutting sarcasm. Thousands praised Hammond for her visible, composed reaction in the moment, calling it a quiet masterclass in accountability without confrontation. She told Cliff on air that he should never have put off the meeting just because Elvis was a little bit heavier, adding a sharp quip about whether that was why he didn't want her at his house. But here's the thing, that story has a 2025 chapter that most people missed entirely. In April 2025, Alison Hammond appeared on Hits Radio and, for the first time, reflected publicly on that now infamous interview. She recalled sitting there thinking, is he really saying that? Confirming that her reaction was entirely genuine and unscripted. Hammond, who has spoken openly about her own lifelong experiences with body image and the bullying she endured because of her weight, explained that she brought her earlier request for a house invitation back into the moment specifically to address what Cliff had said, without turning it into a lecture. The response online was, once again, a wave of admiration for how she handled it. And here's the extra layer of relevance. Cliff has spent 2025 out on his Can't Stop Me Now tour, his 85th birthday celebration, his first Australian date since 2013, and sold-out nights at the Royal Albert Hall in December. A man still showing up. Still performing. And still, wherever he goes, being asked about Elvis. The regret. The reckoning. Because Cliff Richard didn't just tell the refrigerator story and move on. In a subsequent interview on Gold Radio, he opened up with something rawer. He said he was stupid, that he regretted it to that day, and that he would love to be able to say he had met Elvis, but he hadn't. Then came the line that reframes everything. He said he would give anything to go back and agree to take the picture, that he would rather have had a photograph with Elvis at any size than have none at all. He has since urged people everywhere, if you have a chance to meet someone you admire, just go. Don't wait for the moment to be perfect. Because perfect moments have a habit of disappearing. No Elvis, no Cliff, the debt he can never repay. In his memoir, Cliff repeats a phrase again and again, no Elvis, no Cliff. And that is not hyperbole. When you consider what he has built, over 250 million records sold, more than 130 UK top 20 singles, the only artist to achieve UK top 5 albums across 8 consecutive decades, every single thread traces back to that green Citroën in Hertfordshire in May 1956. When Cliff first heard Elvis, he described it as sounding like an alien art form. But the more he studied it, the more he understood, hillbilly music, bluegrass, country, gospel, rhythm and blues, it all went together and came back in the form of Elvis Presley. This was a revelation that didn't just shape Cliff's career. It helped shape the entire British rock and roll scene that would eventually produce the Beatles, the Stones, and the whole British invasion. Cliff was the bridge. The proof of concept. Britain's demonstration that this American sound could cross the Atlantic. He writes in his memoir that on many mornings in Barbados, gazing at the Caribbean from his bedroom window, he wonders how he got from Cheshunt to there. The answer, every time, is Elvis Presley. That's not something you settle accounts with easily, especially when you never got to say thank you in person. And perhaps that's exactly why, at 85 and still actively touring, Cliff Richard keeps returning to this particular wound. It wasn't just a photo op. It was the one chance he had to look his inspiration in the eye and say, "You changed everything for me." And he let it slip away over a refrigerator photograph. The lesson delivered late, but not too late. So here we are. The boy who picked potatoes for a shilling an hour, who knocked on a door in Germany and then ran away, who promoted himself as Britain's Elvis while insisting there could never be an answer to the original, is 85, selling out the Royal Albert Hall, and still repeating the same story of regret and love and a missed connection. He's been clear about what he wants people to take from it. If you have somebody you admire and you get the chance to say hello, just do it. Disregard the temptation to wait. Don't hold out for a better photo. Don't wait for the moment to look right. Because the king isn't waiting for you to be ready. And one day, without warning, he'll be gone. Alison Hammond, still being asked about that interview in April 2025, understands something Cliff had to learn the hard way. You meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. Cliff Richard has had a life of achievement most people can only dream of. He has outlasted virtually every peer from his generation. And yet the story he keeps returning to in every interview, in every memoir, is the one about the meeting that never happened. The king he never shook hands with. The photograph that never existed. He still feels like he owes Elvis everything. And at 85, still on tour and still telling this story, maybe this is the only way he knows how to repay the debt. By saying it out loud, again and again. By letting the world know, Elvis Presley changed everything. Don't make the mistake he made. When you get the chance, go. Say hello. Don't wait for the photo to be perfect. The king isn't waiting for you to be ready.